What's that supposed to be, a souvenir from some cheap tattoo parlor? The words cut through the air like a whip. They were followed by laughter, sharp, ugly. The kind of laughter that's less about humor than about power. Sergeant Naomi Carter stood in the center of the training yard, sleeves rolled to her elbows, the sun striking hard on the dust and concrete around her. She was 32 years old, tall and lean, with the hard edges of a body shaped by years of discipline. Her skin gleamed with sweat beneath the faded checkered shirt she had chosen instead of the standard fatigues. She wasn't one of them, at least not yet, and the ring of Navy SEAL trainees around her was determined to remind her of it. The laughter swelled again as another voice joined in. "She thinks she's one of us? She never will be." Naomi said nothing. She simply stood, her eyes locked forward, unblinking. But the mark on her arm spoke louder than silence ever could. A 5-pointed star, inked in black, stark against her dark skin. The tattoo wasn't large, but it was enough. Enough to draw every sneer, every doubt, every prejudice simmering in that circle of men who believed she didn't belong. The men were young, most of them in their 20s, white, broad-shouldered, eager to prove themselves. Sweat streaked their faces, dust clung to their boots, but their eyes gleamed with the same thing, contempt. They were here to become elite, the nation's best, and in their minds, Naomi Carter had no place among them. She could feel the sting of their scorn, but she refused to flinch. Her jaw tightened, her shoulders squared. Her silence was a shield, though behind it her thoughts burned hot. The heat wasn't only from the sun, it came from the memory of what that tattoo meant, what it had cost, and why she carried it still. The circle pressed in. One recruit, tall, sandy-haired, his name tag reading O'Malley, tilted his head toward her. "Hey, sweetheart, where'd you earn that? On a weekend trip to Vegas?" His smirk widened as the others chuckled. Naomi's eyes flicked to him, just for a second. They blazed, not with anger she would let loose, but with something more dangerous, restraint. She could have answered. She could have told them the truth, but the truth was a weapon they weren't ready for, and she knew it. Instead, she breathed in, out. Her silence only deepened their laughter. And then, everything stopped. The sound of boots striking the ground cut across the yard, measured steps, deliberate, carrying a weight heavier than authority, history. General Richard Hale emerged from the far side of the training field. At 61, he was a towering presence, broad-chested despite the years, his silver hair clipped short, his jaw carved from granite. His pale skin, weathered by decades under foreign suns, marked him as unmistakably white. Every man on that field stiffened at the sight of him. His reputation was iron, decorated combat veteran, strategist, commander whose voice alone could steady chaos. To them, he was untouchable authority. But in this moment, he was more than that. He was witness. Naomi didn't move. "Wait a second. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us." The recruits shifted uneasily, straightening, the jeers caught in their throats. The sun hammered down. The only sound was the steady rhythm of the general's boots as he crossed the training ground. He stopped just a few feet from Naomi, his eyes sweeping the circle of men before settling on her. His gaze lingered on the tattoo inked into her arm. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then General Hale did something no one expected. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the cuff of his own sleeve. He rolled it back, one turn, then another. His arm, pale against the sun, came into view, and there, etched into his skin, was the same black star. Identical. The reaction was instantaneous. Laughter evaporated. The air thickened. The silence became suffocating. It was as if the entire yard had been snapped into a new reality, one they couldn't quite comprehend. The recruit's eyes darted from Naomi to the general and back again. Questions flickered, unspoken but electric. Why did he have it? Why did she? What did it mean? Naomi didn't move. Her face was carved from stone, but inside, her chest tightened. For the first time, the weight of the tattoo was not hers alone to bear. General Hale's eyes scanned the circle once more. He said nothing about the tattoo, nothing about its meaning. His voice, when it came, was cold, commanding, stripped of any hint of explanation. "Back to training." The words fell like a gavel. The men scrambled, instinct overtaking curiosity. They broke formation, retreating toward the obstacle course, the firing range, the endless drills designed to break and rebuild them. But their eyes lingered, glances thrown over shoulders, questions gnawing silently in their minds. Naomi remained where she stood, the dust swirling faintly at her boots. The general turned away, his sleeve still rolled, the star on his arm visible for all to see. And in that charged silence, one truth settled in. Whatever bound Naomi Carter and General Richard Hale together, it was something larger than this training ground, larger than rank, larger even than the Navy SEALs themselves. But the star they had mocked was no cheap design, no weekend indulgence. It was a scar carved in ink, a symbol earned in fire, and it carried a story that would one day force every last one of them to confront their own blind prejudice. For now, though, all they had was silence, and the certainty that nothing in this yard was quite as simple as it had seemed a moment ago, and Naomi Carter, alone, steady, unyielding, stood at the center of it, her eyes fierce with a promise she had yet to make. What was the bond between the forgotten soldier and the untouchable commander? No one knew, not yet, but they would. The laughter that had once filled the training yard did not return. Instead, it was replaced by something quieter but no less dangerous. Whispers. They began in corners of the barracks, in murmurs over mess hall trays, in half-heard comments while lacing boots. Why would a man like General Richard Hale bear the same tattoo as Naomi Carter? And more pointedly, why would she? The speculation was a spark on dry grass. It spread with speed, fed by prejudice and suspicion, until it became fire. She must have some special deal with the general, one recruit muttered in the gym, wiping sweat from his forehead as his bench press clattered back into place. Another leaned close, lowering his voice but not his malice. That's how she got in this unit, not because of merit, not because she earned it. The others nodded, too eager to believe. In their eyes, Naomi Carter could not possibly stand on equal footing. Not here, not in this brotherhood carved from bone and blood. If she was present, it had to be by trickery, by favoritism, by something unearned. The more the rumor was spoken, the truer it felt to them. Truth mattered less than repetition. Naomi heard fragments, always carried on the edges of voices, always meant for her to overhear but never meant to be owned aloud. She carried it in silence, as she carried every other burden. Her face betrayed nothing, her posture remained straight, but silence does not shield one from cruelty. During drills, she was assigned double the weight in her rucksack. No one said it outright, it simply appeared, a cruel joke passed as oversight. On the obstacle course, she found herself cut from the squad rotations, team maneuvers that demanded trust and coordination. She was pushed to the margins, made to work alone, and in live fire simulations, the danger became sharper. A crate nudged just off its mark, forcing her to dive for cover. A smoke charge planted 2 paces closer than regulation, burning her lungs and blinding her sight while the others stood back, smirking at her struggle. Each act was small enough to be denied if called out, but heavy enough when added together to crush a weaker spirit. Naomi Carter was not weak. She moved through every trial with a calm that infuriated them. Her breath stayed even, her eyes locked forward, her muscles trembled under the strain, but her will did not. The more they sought to break her, the more her endurance exposed their pettiness. And that truth, unspoken, undeniable, was the sharpest thorn in their pride. One afternoon, as the platoon finished a grueling march under a punishing sun, Lieutenant Mark O'Malley, the tall sandy-haired recruit who had mocked her first, dropped his pack onto the ground. He was 27, son of a career officer, broad-chested and loud-voiced. His confidence often crossed into arrogance, his humor into cruelty. He wiped sweat from his neck, then turned toward Naomi, his tone pitched for the others to hear. "Tell me something, Carter. Does the general write you personal notes of encouragement too, or just show you his little star when no one else is around?" The men around him chuckled, not with real mirth but with that sharp-edged laughter that binds cruelty into fellowship. Naomi slid her pack off her shoulders. Her face glistened with sweat, her lips pressed tight. She said nothing. Her silence only invited more. O'Malley smirked. "You know, in this unit we earn respect the hard way. No shortcuts, no favors. Maybe one day you'll understand that." It was a line meant to cut. It didn't land the way he wanted. Naomi met his gaze, steady, unwavering. She spoke at last, her voice low but clear. "I don't need your respect, Lieutenant. Only your discipline. If you have that, we'll all survive. If you don't, nothing the general or I do will save you." The words stilled the air. They weren't sharp, but they carried weight. O'Malley's smirk faltered, then twisted into scorn. He turned away, muttering, "We'll see about that." The pattern deepened in the weeks that followed. At dawn, when the platoon was ordered into the surf for conditioning, Naomi was always sent in first, made to stand longer in the icy water. At night, when equipment checks were done, her gear was accidentally misplaced, forcing her to scramble at the last minute. Every indignity was calculated to push her toward failure. Yet failure never came. Naomi's body ached, her bones screamed, but she carried on. Her endurance was not silent suffering, it was defiance without a single wasted word. She embodied discipline, and discipline is a language soldiers cannot ignore forever. Still, resentment festered. The harder she worked, the more she revealed the gap between their cruelty and her strength. It was Corporal Daniel Reeves who finally voiced what others only thought. Reeves was a broad-shouldered Midwesterner, his blonde hair cropped close, his jaw perpetually set in a frown. He was not cruel in the way O'Malley was, but his conviction was absolute. Rules mattered, hierarchy mattered, and anyone who disrupted order deserved his suspicion. Late one evening, as the unit cooled down from the obstacle course, Reeves stepped toward Naomi. His voice was measured but cold. "You think your silence makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you suspicious. Men who belong don't have to prove it over and over. They just are." Naomi's reply was as even as her breath. "Men who belong don't need to push others out to feel secure." The line was not loud. It wasn't sharp, but it landed. A few men shifted uncomfortably, their gazes flicking away. Reeves clenched his jaw. He had no answer. The days stretched into weeks. Each sunrise brought new trials. Naomi bore them all. She never asked for fairness. She only demanded the chance to finish what was placed before her. Her presence unsettled them because it exposed a truth they didn't want to see, that merit was not their birthright, and brotherhood was not defined by skin. But pride blinds deeper than smoke. The more she endured, the more determined they became to push harder, to prove her unworthy. In the barracks at night, the whispers continued. Some men laughed, others muttered in low tones, but the refrain was always the same. She doesn't belong here. She's hiding something. She only stands because someone powerful is holding her up. And Naomi Carter, alone in her bunk, stared at the ceiling, listening to the rustle of sheets and the hushed venom of voices. Her body was exhausted, her muscles burning, but her mind remained clear. Discipline was more than endurance. It was a weapon, and though they did not know it yet, every cruel hour they gave her was sharpening its edge. When the lights dimmed, when the barracks fell quiet at last, she closed her eyes. The ache in her body was real, but so was the fire in her spirit. Tomorrow they would try again to break her. Tomorrow they would fail again. And with every failure, the truth they mocked would draw nearer to revelation. Night draped itself over the base like a heavy shroud. The day's drills had ended hours earlier, but Naomi Carter still felt the weight of them in her bones. Her arms ached, her legs throbbed, yet her mind refused to surrender to sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring into the dark, when the sound came, a sharp knock on the barracks door, followed by a voice that carried the weight of command. "Carter, General Hale wants you in his office." The room stirred. A few of the men shifted in their beds, their whispers rustling in the dark. She could almost feel their eyes pressing into her back as she rose. Whatever curiosity gnawed at them during the day now burned hotter at night. Naomi tied her boots with steady hands and followed the escort down the long corridor. The silence of the base after hours was almost eerie. Hallways stripped of their noise, lit only by the low hum of fluorescent bulbs. At the end of the passage stood a door of dark oak, the brass nameplate gleaming faintly. General Richard Hale. Inside, the office was austere. Maps lined the walls, pins marking regions of conflict. Commendations and citations filled a single shelf, rows of framed testaments to decades of service. Yet the room was stripped of vanity. The air carried the gravity of a place where decisions too heavy for daylight had been made. Behind the desk sat General Hale. His silver hair caught the glow of the desk lamp, his face cast in sharp relief. He gestured for Naomi to sit. On the desk between them lay a thick dossier, its cover stamped in red. Naomi's breath caught. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. General Hale leaned forward, his hands clasped, his voice a low rumble. "You've carried their whispers long enough. Tonight you'll carry something else." Her eyes flicked to the file, then back to him. "Sir, you kept it." He opened the folder slowly, the pages whispering like ghosts. And there, buried within the black lines of redaction, fragments of a story too dangerous to be told in public. "Operation Orion," he said, his voice steady, but tinged with weight. "A mission buried in the dust of the Middle East. They know it as a failure. What they don't know is who made sure it wasn't." Naomi stared at the pages. Memories surged, sandstorms tearing through the night, the rattle of gunfire echoing against broken stone, the screams of men cut short. She remembered faces, faces of brothers in arms who had never come home. General Hale's gaze fixed on her. "Most of our unit fell. I should have been among them. But I'm here. I'm alive, Carter, because you refused to leave me behind." His words landed like a weight she had carried in silence for years. She lowered her eyes. "It wasn't just me, sir. They fought. They gave everything, and you gave what they could not," he replied. His tone softened. Not gentle, but deeply respectful. "You held the line when the line was gone." He turned a page and tapped a photograph, the ruins of a compound, smoke rising into the desert night. "The record says command completed the mission. The record does not say your name." Naomi's jaw tightened. She had known this truth, lived with it, but hearing it aloud felt like an old wound torn open, because it was classified, because the world doesn't need to know what it cost. Exactly, Hale said. For security, your name was struck from the official report, wiped clean. To them you never existed there. His hand drifted toward his sleeve, tugging it up once more to reveal the black star etched on his arm. But this, he said quietly, is the record that matters. Naomi looked down at her own arm, at the same symbol inked into her flesh. It was more than a tattoo. It was a covenant, a silent oath carved in ink and memory. That star, Hale continued, was given only to those who came back from Orion. Survivors, Carter. Not because they lived, but because they carried others out of hell. There are only 6 of us left in the world who bear it. 6. His words hung heavy in the dim light. Naomi's throat tightened, and none of them speak of it, nor should they. His gaze locked with hers. This is not a badge to flaunt. It's a mark of debt. Debt to the fallen. Debt to each other. You've honored it by your silence. For the first time in weeks, Naomi allowed the fire in her chest to flicker outward. They think I'm here because of you. They think I cheated my way in, that everything I've done is borrowed. General Hale's voice deepened, steady as stone. Let them think. Truth is not something you declare, Carter. Truth is something you show. He leaned back in his chair, his hands folding over the file. One day they'll know, and when they do, it won't be because you told them. It will be because you showed them. The words struck her harder than any insult she had endured. They were not consolation, they were command. Silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the lamp. Naomi sat upright, her eyes locked on the general's. She felt the fire steady into resolve. Then I'll keep showing them, sir, until there's no doubt left. General Hale gave a single nod. That's why you're here. She glanced once more at the open file, the classified truth that could never be spoken. Then she turned and left, the door closing softly behind her. The corridor seemed longer on the way back, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. In the barracks, the men shifted as she entered. She felt their stares, heard the quick hush of voices. The rumors had not died, they had only grown. But inside her, something had shifted. She no longer carried their contempt as weight. She carried it as fuel. Naomi Carter was no fraud. She was no pretender propped up by power. She was a survivor of hell, marked by fire, bound to a truth the world could not erase. And though the unit did not yet know it, their contempt was building toward a reckoning. The morning sun was merciless, beating down on the mock battlefield, where the recruits prepared for their final simulation of the week. Blank rounds rattled in their rifles, smoke grenades rested in pouches, and adrenaline thrummed in their veins. It was designed to mimic chaos, to strip away bravado, and reveal who could lead when everything fell apart. Naomi Carter stood among them, silent as ever. Her star tattoo lay hidden beneath her sleeve, yet every man around her felt the memory of it, their unease sharpened by rumor. The laughter that once followed her had grown brittle, but suspicion still clung like dust. The exercise began. Gunfire cracked, boots thundered, voices barked orders over the din. For a few minutes the unit moved with precision. Then a grenade misfired, its pin slipped, its canister rolled. A sudden hiss filled the air, and thick gray smoke burst outward in the wrong sector. The fog rose fast, blinding, choking. The recruits shouted in panic. Wrong direction. We're trapped. I can't see a thing. Where's the exit? The formation dissolved into chaos. Some stumbled deeper into the haze, others froze in place. Their training, days of sweat and drill, collapsed under the weight of disorientation. Naomi did not collapse. Her breath stayed even. Her memory of deserts and ruins, of nights when smoke meant death, steadied her now. She dropped to her knee, gauging the pull of wind, the lay of the ground. Stay low, her voice cut through the clamor. Follow me. At first only 2 heard, then 3. Slowly the frightened cluster shifted toward her. She moved forward with calm authority, her silhouette steady where theirs faltered. Keep your hand on the man in front of you, she commanded. Eyes on me. Don't stop. Through the blinding fog she led them, weaving past hazards, her every step deliberate. The recruits coughed and stumbled, but they followed. Within minutes they broke free of the smoke cloud, stumbling into clear air. They collapsed on the ground, gasping, their lungs burning, their eyes red. And then realization dawned. It was Naomi who had brought them out. Not O'Malley with his sharp tongue, not Reeves with his rigid pride. Naomi, the one they had mocked, sidelined, mistrusted. She had carried them out of the fog, just as she once had carried others out of hell. Silence fell over the group. No one dared laugh now. They looked at her, still standing tall, her breath measured, her eyes scanning the field. She was unshaken. She was leader. A young private, barely 20, freckles still scattered across his cheeks, rose unsteadily to his feet. His voice cracked, stripped of arrogance. Ma'am, you saved us. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Heads bowed. Others nodded. One by one the recruits straightened, their gazes shifting from suspicion to something else entirely. Respect born not of orders, but of survival. Only then did another voice thunder into the silence. General Richard Hale stepped forward,
his boots striking the ground with measured authority. His silver hair caught the sunlight, his face stern as stone. He looked over the recruits, then turned his gaze on Naomi. "You mocked her tattoo," he said, his voice reverberating across the yard. "You laughed at what you could not understand. Let me tell you what it means." He rolled back his sleeve. The black star on his arm glared in the sun. This star was given only to those who carried their brothers out of hell. "It is not decoration, it is testimony. I am alive because she refused to leave me behind. That is the only reason I stand here today." The recruits stiffened. Some glanced at Naomi in disbelief, others in shame. General Hale's voice cut deeper. "You doubted her worth. You questioned why she was here. Now you know. She has proven more in silence than you have with all your shouting. And she has proven it not once, but twice, long ago in battle. And today, right in front of you." They remembered the panic of the smoke, the hand on the shoulder in front of them, the steady voice that had guided them out. They owed her their breath, their survival, and now they knew they owed her far more. O'Malley, the sandy-haired lieutenant who had mocked her most, stepped forward. His jaw trembled, his bravado shattered. Slowly, deliberately, he straightened to attention. "Ma'am, thank you, for today, and for everything I didn't see until now." He raised his hand in salute. One by one, the others followed. Reeves, rigid and proud, dropped his gaze in humility before he lifted his hand. Soon the entire unit stood in formation, not in mockery, but in solemn respect, their arms raised, their eyes fixed on Naomi Carter. Naomi said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence was no longer an invitation for scorn, it was the mark of authority earned. General Hale stepped closer, a polished insignia glinting in his hand. Slowly, he placed it into her palm. "Carter," he said, his voice heavy with meaning, "you've carried the burden in silence. Now carry the command that comes with it." Naomi closed her fingers around the insignia. She gave a single nod, her face calm, her eyes unyielding. She had never asked for vindication, yet here it stood before her, undeniable. The star inked on her arm, once a target for ridicule, now gleamed in their eyes as a symbol of honor. The days that followed were different. The whispers that once shadowed her bunk fell silent, replaced with the quiet weight of respect. Where Naomi walked, men who had mocked her now stood aside, not out of fear but recognition. Training drills carried new discipline, not forced but inspired. When she spoke, they listened. When she led, they followed. Even O'Malley, once loud with contempt, kept his voice measured, his eyes steady with respect. General Hale offered no further explanations. None were needed. The truth had spoken for itself, in smoke, in silence, in survival. Naomi Carter never demanded their apology. She didn't need it. Her vindication had come not from rumor or revelation alone, but from action. She had saved their lives, just as she once had saved his, and the lesson remained, seared into every man who now saluted her. Prejudice may blind, but truth, and the courage to live it, will always force eyes open. Sometimes the fiercest battles are not fought on foreign soil, but in the narrow trenches of prejudice and pride. We witnessed how one woman's silence, discipline, and courage unraveled a wall of contempt brick by brick, until even her harshest doubters had no choice but to salute. Naomi Carter's story is a reminder that respect cannot be borrowed, and dignity cannot be granted by rumor or rank. It must be earned, lived and proven, again and again, until truth makes itself undeniable. The black star inked into her arm began as a mark of survival. In the end, it became something greater, a symbol of honor strong enough to force closed eyes to finally see.